So Astrobot has gotten a PlayStation 5 Pro patch. I haven't checked it out myself, but people at DF have. So who would like to take the reins on this one?
Well, I am people, as it turns out in this instance, because I did take a detailed look at Astrobot on PS5 Pro. So it was updated yesterday with a kind of innocuous patch. Like Rich sent it to the chat, and we didn't really think too much of it, because it says that we are pleased that owners of the PS5 Pro will be able to enjoy an improved version of Astrobot featuring a constant best resolution while still running at 60 frames per second.
Constant best resolution.
Yes. So that's a little bit of an ambiguous wording. It sounds on the surface like kind of a DRS tweak, right? Or maybe native 4K or something, but presumably, nothing too crazy going on right there, right? And that's interesting because the game already used DRS on PS5. On PS5 Pro, it seems like it just increases the resolution range, right? Because you have more GPU power to bring to the table, maybe a 30% improvement in typical workloads there in Astrobot, and so you see a higher resolution there. And so it's not totally clear exactly what that would mean for PS5 Pro in this instance. But I've done some comparisons in reality between the pre-patch and post-patch versions. Pre-patch is version 1.011 here, post-patch is 1.012. And the changes are actually quite interesting, to my surprise. It definitely looks quite different. It looks more detailed, sharper, but noisier and kind of fundamentally unstable. Usually there's a bit less aliasing, less jagged edges. Sometimes aliasing is worse on like specific models, specific areas of the screen. Usually it's a bit better. Now, viewers who have heard us talk about PS5 Pro before, maybe getting a sense of what's going on here. And yes, I believe they are using PSSR, PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, probably to go to 4K, which is, in my own reading of their comments here, maybe that's what that constant best resolution means here. Upscaling to a constant high resolution, instead of using TAA from whatever resolution and not doing a temporal upscale where you see more variance in the final quality of the image. But PSSR doesn't do the most amazing job of achieving a super stable 4K image necessarily, so it's not all rainbows and path tracing there. Relative to the old solution, which was, just using the Pro's GPU, presumably, to increase the dynamic resolution, the results are a bit mixed, I would say, in these comparison shots, but better on the whole. In terms of stability, the old TA plus naive upscale versus PSSR, they have their strengths and weaknesses in motion and in idle here. The old TA actually tended to alias quite a bit sometimes, even in still shots, whereas with PSSR, it doesn't alias as much, and the aliasing tends to be a little bit milder. And the PSSR resolve is always at a pretty high level of sharpness, whereas the old solution changes a lot more depending on the content and the complexity of the scene. So in bigger scenes like I have here, it can look more aliased and softer. The other change between them is that screen space reflections, I think, look a little bit worse with PSSR. Maybe that comes down to PSSR doing a worse job with denoising, which is a common characteristic. But overall, I think I prefer the PSSR presentation just because less aliasing, little sharper, some noise, but you're not really going to notice that from typical viewing distances, I think, in this title with this content. It could be a different solution, but from my time analyzing PSSR, identifying PSSR across lots of titles, I'm fairly sure it's PSSR here. It'd be interesting to see if this maybe was using FSR instead. Maybe that would produce a different result. I'd be curious to see that. Maybe we'll get a PC version at some point and we'll know what that would look like. But in terms of resolution counts, I did a number of resolution counts, which are on screen right now. And I found that the Pro version now counts at a consistently lower res than it did before, which is, I think, what you would assume, given that PSSR consumes a decent chunk of GPU time, like 2 milliseconds for a 4K upscale, in that vicinity. So resolutions are lower by a fair margin. But again, image quality is where it matters. Performance is simple. It's a log 60. So the other visual change that I saw that's a little bit odd is that sometimes shadow maps at a distance looked a bit different. There could be a difference in filtering or resolution or something, but they looked a bit softer on PS5 Pro, but less obviously aliased relative to the prior patch now. They've also added, perhaps more importantly than all this technical minutia, they've added a new galaxy and a new challenge level. And I think they're going to be releasing a new challenge level for the next few weeks here. I think they have 5 challenge levels in total.
Oh, wow.
I tried it. It was pretty tough, I will say, but pretty fun, I would say. It's a challenge level, so you have to restart from the beginning every time you fail, which really makes it a little bit of a seat of your pants kind of experience relative to the other levels in the game, which have generous checkpointing and are a little bit easier to progress through. They do keep adding levels and content to this game, and it's a single one-time purchase thing, so I'm all for that here. It just seems like they're going to keep adding content to the game until they get sick or they're told to stop or they hit a certain mark in terms of bots or worlds or something. But I think it's super admirable that they keep pumping out content here. And I think this PS5 Pro upgrade, it's not earth-shaking, but it's reasonably worthwhile. It's an improvement.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, yeah, the slight negatives there, but also a lot of positive. And in general, if you don't like it, you can always technically revert to the previous patch, I guess, or just run the disc version, right? So
yeah, you could run the disc
there's
version.
something to be said about that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that's all fine to me.